looking, throwing in the end zone. Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis, plus timely and entertaining sports and pop culture topics. And today, we're going to be putting a bow on the Cleveland game. I'm going to be sharing some ratings by Pro Football Focus, snap counts, what Coach Kyle Shanahan had to say about the defense, specifically the run defense. We're going to be talking injuries and availability, and then diving into the Monday night game, San Francisco at Minnesota. In the plus section, we're going to talk some NBA, James Harden drama on the 76ers. We're going to be talking some comic books, specifically Geoff Johns' run on the Justice Society of America, and we will conclude by making Week 7 NFL picks. But like always, it starts with the Niners, so let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners.
All right, let's put a bow on last week's game at Cleveland with some ratings from Pro Football Focus. Top 5 rated on offense and defense. Let's start on offense. Charlie Woerner, tight end, 73.3, only 5 snaps. Jauan Jennings at receiver, a 71. Brandon Ayuk, 69.8. Running back Jordan Mason, 68.9 on 15 snaps. And Christian McCaffrey, 68.2 before he had to leave in the second half with that oblique rib injury. Defense, Fred Warner, 81.1. Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, 75.3 at linebacker on 19 snaps. Clelin Ferrell, 74.1. Diamador Lenore, 73.2. And Nick Bosa, 73.1. When you look at the offensive ratings, you can obviously tell it was a bad day when you had backups like Werner and Mason being in the top 5 highest rated players, and they only played 5 and 15 snaps respectively. On defense, Warner, all pro. You had Ferrell have a slightly better game than Bosa, although Bosa did have a sack. Lenore, and then Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles at 19 snaps, although he played less than Oren Burks, who was the starter in place of Dre Greenlaw. Now, snap counts, another interesting thing just to talk about a bit. So offensively, only 62 snaps for the Niners on offense. Here's how it broke down. At receiver, with Debo going out in the first quarter, Ray McCloud wound up getting 44 snaps. Jauan Jennings, 63. George Kittle at tight end, 61 snaps. Charlie Woerner, 4 offensive snaps. Ross Dwelly, 4 offensive snaps. Jordan Mason, 15. And Eli Mitchell, 7. Let's go to the defense, then we're going to bounce back and talk about all of these. So defense, 76 total snaps. Bosa, 68. Isaiah Oliver at nickelback, 57. Eric Armstead, 54. Javon Hargrave, 49. Javon Kinlaw, 29. Clelin Ferrell, 36. Randy Gregory, 26. And Drake Jackson, 22. So McCloud coming in with 44 snaps needed to take over the Debo Samuel role of being the gadget receiver. And he did wind up getting a jet sweep on one play. Wasn't super active in the downfield passing game. No handoffs, no bubble screens, tunnel screens, slip screens, anything like that. Jennings around his usual average of 30. He had 33 snaps. Now, George Kittle played 61 of 62 snaps. Too much. And they weren't running the ball once McCaffrey wound up getting hurt. They really, in a lot of ways, went away from the running game. So to see his backups, Charlie Woerner and Ross Dwelly, only get 4 snaps apiece, you got to shave maybe another 5 to 10 snaps off of Kittle. This is either just game preservation or trying to find some trust. And we're going to talk about that in the Vikings preview. Trust in other players beyond your starters. Jordan Mason, 15 snaps, basically once McCaffrey went out, and Eli Mitchell only 7. I think, again, he had 2 rushes for -3 yards, and we'll see what's going to happen against the Vikings if McCaffrey's not able to go. Now, on defense, Nick Bosa played 68 of 76 snaps. I think that might be a high for the year. Oliver, again, solidifying himself as the nickel corner with 57 snaps. Interesting to see Eric Armstead get 5 more snaps than Javon Hargrave, with Hargrave being the big free agent prize and being able to penetrate and win one-on-ones or double teams to generate pass rush. So that was interesting to me. Kinlaw, again, defensive tackle number 3. I think Kevin Givens behind him wound up getting 20 snaps. And on the defensive end rotation, Clelin Ferrell has established himself as the number 2 DN with 36 snaps. But then Randy Gregory leapfrogs Drake Jackson. Gregory's first game with the Niners, 26 snaps. Drake Jackson, 22. So again, I think you got to take maybe 5 to 10 snaps away from Bosa and more evenly distribute them between Jackson and Gregory just to keep Bosa a bit more fresh. And I think I've been harping on this, whether it's been McCaffrey, Kittle this week and in previous weeks, and on the defense. You can't have them playing over whatever 68 out of 76 is. You're talking, 85+% of the defensive snaps. You can't have Bosa doing that. Even though he's got his legs back from, holding out until he got his contract, giving Ferrell, 5 more snaps, Gregory 5, Jackson 5. And maybe Jackson was still shaken up. I know he collided, I think, with Bosa in the game against the Cowboys and went out. So maybe there's still some sort of lingering injury or something lingering physically with him. But if not, telling that Randy Gregory wound up getting 26 snaps. Is it an instance where maybe they just wanted to see what Gregory can do and they force-fed him more snaps than maybe they would have otherwise? I don't know. But to outsnap Drake Jackson, who's supposed to be DN number 2 or DN number 3, and it looks like Clelin Ferrell, has leapfrogged him. Interesting to me and something to keep an eye on moving forward. Now, Kyle Shanahan spoke to the media and talked about the run defense, and he had he said exactly what I said in the last podcast on how the run defense was not nearly good enough against the Browns. A couple quotes. We're going to get there, then we're going to talk about it. From Shanahan, quote, "I thought they got our edges way too much, just blocking down on our DNs and getting around them. We played a lot more two-shell defense, and when you play two-shell defense, you're a little bit behind in the run game. But we've been able to stop guys pretty good in that way. When they got our ends, we didn't get our safeties downhill, and they bled us out too much." Next quote, "And when you add on a couple of those missed tackles and everything, it was way too much, especially when you've got a quarterback coming in who hasn't started yet. The best way to make that guy uncomfortable is to take away the run game, and with 160 rushing yards, we obviously didn't. That was disappointing, especially on those last 2 drives." 100% agree, right? Couple things. The first quote about playing, a lot of, two-shell defense, a bit of a softer defense. Yes, that leaves you a bit more vulnerable in the running game. Why Steve Wilks didn't adjust to this, at least going in, I don't know. And Shanahan's right. They've been doing a good job on that the first 5 games of the season. I'm going to get into the rushing yards that they allowed prior to, the Browns game letting up 160. But why not be more aggressive? Why not take a page from Jim Schwartz's playbook on really pitting your ears back, getting after everybody, getting after the pass, PJ Walker, filling, having gap discipline on the D-line, filling run lanes, or play a 5-man line. Remember the Niners a couple years ago had difficulty with that when the Rams were employing it and other teams were doing it too. Why not? Dare PJ Walker to beat you. They played PJ Walker as if he was Deshaun Watson. And I said last podcast, I don't think statistically there was much of a difference between what PJ Walker did and what Watson could have done, right? I have Deshaun Watson on one of my fantasy teams. I'm well aware of what he's doing week in and week out. I don't think there was that much of a difference. But the Niners did not take away from the run. You can't get complacent. I think this 49er defense, especially the pass defense, we're going to get into that, is living off of reputation than actual production this year. And now we are a third of the way through the season. I don't know how much is going to change. Wilks has the reputation of being more aggressive with blitzes. Let's see it. Let's see it. Come after Cousins. And I don't want to jump ahead to the Vikings preview, but they did not adjust to take the Browns' running game away, even though the Browns have a good offensive line on top of missing one of their starting guards. But Kyle Shanahan was right. The best way to make a quarterback uncomfortable, especially an experienced one, is to take away the run, and they did not do that with 160 yards. Now, the first 5 games, if you want to say if it ain't broke, don't fix it, Pittsburgh, 41 rushing yards allowed. The Rams, 89. The Giants, 29. Arizona, 105. Dallas, 57. Cleveland, now, if they thought, oh, no Nick Chubb, no Deshaun Watson, are they really, even playing our base defense, are they going to be able to run? Yes. And at what point were there any adjustments made to take it away? Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt both had good games running the ball. Neither went for over 100 yards, but both had around 70. And they got grimy, dirty yards, missed tackles, turning a 2-yard pickup into a 4 or 5-yard pickup. But it starts with, to me, with Steve Wilks not putting your personnel in the right situation to take away the run. And I'm not saying I mentioned playing a 5-man D line. And that doesn't mean a linebacker. That means a legit D lineman on running downs to take it away, to blitz PJ Walker more. We didn't see things. We saw the same 49er defense, which was still decent. They gave up, I think, 320 plus yards of total offense. So it wasn't a complete travesty, or 340 yards of offense, whatever it was. But they could have made, to Kyle's point, PJ Walker a lot more uncomfortable, the way that the Browns made, even though a young quarterback, a more experienced quarterback in Brock Purdy, much more uncomfortable than what the Niners did to PJ Walker. And we'll see how that changes moving forward. It might not be this week against the Vikings, but against quarterbacks that you want to make one-dimensional, the Niners did not do that, and one of the reasons why they lost. Now, as we talked about, a lot went wrong this game, and the Browns running for 160 yards isn't something that went wrong. It's what the Browns took. The Niners didn't really give it to them. The Browns took that. They earned that. But even with things that went wrong, San Fran was still there at the end with a chance to win. Jake Moody, and I know I called him Nick Moody a bunch of times in the previous podcast. I apologize to both Nick Moody and Jake Moody and anybody out there that was correcting me. But from, Purdy's first interception, PJ Walker's throw, diving on the ground, that could have been a fumble, Tayshaun Gibson's penalty, the injuries they sustained between Trent Williams, who came back, Debo, who went out in the first quarter, McCaffrey, who went out in the second half, Greenlaw, who didn't play, and Jake Moody's 2 misses, not just the final one, but one before that, all that being taken into account, San Francisco still had a chance to win at the end of the game. So I'm not worried. I think this is a good loss. It is a wake-up, and the weather too, but both teams obviously had to play in the weather. Penalties, 12 penalties. A lot had to go right for Cleveland to be within striking distance, to get ahead at the end, and Moody missing a field goal, or else the Browns, would be 2-4. The Niners 6-0 in the narrative, as I mentioned last podcast, around Brock Purdy would be, you can't hold him down for 4 quarters. He looked bad. Last drive, he dug deep, got his team into position, drove down to the 23-yard line of the Browns, put him in position to win, and Moody knocked the field goal through. A missed field goal changes the narrative on everything and everyone, right? Because if they had won, Niners don't have their A game, but they still win. Now the Niners lose, and everybody looks like crap, right? Everybody looks like crap. So injuries coming out of the game, Trent Williams fought through with the ankle, Debo Samuel with the shoulder injury, and McCaffrey an oblique or rib injury. He underwent an MRI on Monday, and they still haven't announced what the actual injury is, at least as of this recording. all players seem to be day to day, and they are going to be pain tolerance issues. Can Trent Williams block again on that ankle? Can he be effective? Can Debo play through the shoulder, and McCaffrey with the oblique or rib? And that leads us into the preview for San Francisco and Minnesota, Monday night, 8:15 Eastern on ESPN. The Vikings are 2-4, coming off of a win at Chicago. The other game that they have won was at Carolina. So they've obviously beaten two bad teams. They lost at home to Tampa Bay, at Philadelphia, at home to the Chargers, and at home to the Chiefs. One thing to make note of and be aware of, all their losses and their wins, actually, they are all one-score games. Last year, this was a Viking team, and, similarly, the New York Giants, who are having a terrible season, that were winning those close games. The Vikings were winning those one-score games to get to a 13-4 record. This is the dreaded regression to the mean, where, they lost 4 one-score games this year. They might have won 2 of those last year. Last year's Vikings might have been 4-2 at this point, or 5-1. Whether it's luck, whether it's just being able to convert, whether it's just having a different team, different situation on the field. But they are 0-4, all one-score games. It doesn't mean the Vikings are a bad luck team or can't convert. Now I'm going to flip it if I'm Kyle Shanahan and say, listen, this is a team that's not getting blown out. The Browns got blown out by by the Ravens before their bye, came off their bye and beat San Francisco. The Vikings are not getting manhandled. They are within 1 score every game. They are obviously a team to take seriously. You have to take every NFL team seriously. But this is not a pushover, even without Justin Jefferson. And even though, you go back to the famous Dennis Green, or was it Herm Edwards or Bill Parcells, whoever said you are what your record says you are. Yeah, the Vikings are a 2-4 team. I don't think they're a great team. They're a mediocre team or a slightly below average team. That doesn't mean you don't put your foot on their throat as soon as possible. And players-wise, let's go over who they have on offense. Kirk Cousins, again, I keep saying probably the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. Alexander Mattison takes on the rushing duties in place of Dalvin Cook, who's with the Jets. They traded for Cam Akers from the Rams, finally started getting some carries. Definitely last week. I'm not sure if he got any the week before. Tight end TJ Hawkinson. Rookie receiver Jordan Addison from USC and KJ Osborne will be the top 2 wide receiver targets, with Justin Jefferson being out. On defense, it starts on the line with Danielle Hunter. He was rumored throughout the offseason to possibly be a trade target by the 49ers and other teams. Hunter is on the last year of his contract. Linebacker Jordan Hicks, cornerback Byron Murphy Jr., and Pro Bowl safety Harrison Smith. As a team, the Vikings can get after the quarterback. They have 18 sacks as a team. They are averaging 3 a game. Danielle Hunter by himself has 8. They are not great at turning the ball over, only 3 interceptions so far as a team. Offensively, the Vikings are 12th overall in the NFL. They are the 3rd-ranked pass offense, averaging 263.7 yards a game, 30th running the ball for 75 yards a game, 18th in points scored at 21.5. On defense, they are 15th overall, 17th against the pass, allowing 218.8 yards a game, 18th against the rush, allowing 112.3 yards a game, 21st in points allowed, 22.5, and their turnover differential of -8 ranks them last in the NFL. Now, offensively, they can throw the ball. They are going to keep throwing the ball, even with Justin Jefferson being out. They're going to try to get Cousins, 35 or 40 attempts, because they cannot run the ball, at least to this point, averaging only 75 rushing yards a game. This better not be a game where the Vikings go over 100 yards. The Niners keep the Vikings to their weekly average of rushing. They're going to win this game. Take the run away, especially with Justin Jefferson not being out. Are we saying that Jordan Addison and KJ Osborne and other receivers can't hurt the Niners? Of course they have. These are all NFL caliber players. Take the run away. Make the Vikings one-dimensional on passing downs. Get after Cousins. Don't just rely on your front four. I want to see more aggressiveness. Not only just this game. I mean, this game maybe because, everyone's got the bad taste in their mouth from the loss. How non-aggressive they looked against an offense that was begging the 49ers before the game to be aggressive. PJ Walker, third-string quarterback, get after him. They didn't. Are the Niners going to just revert to form and play their cover three or two deep shell and just let Kirk Cousins pick them apart underneath? I wouldn't do that. Challenge these receivers. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He's going to make some big-time throws throughout the course of this game. Limit them. And if a big-time throw is completing a 12-yard in on 3rd and 10, great. Just minimize the explosive plays. You don't need a 40, 45-yard bomb to a receiver or a 30-yard seam route to TJ Hawkinson. They can shut this offense down, but it starts with shutting the run down. And listen, if Kirk Cousins gets 325 empty yards and the Vikings only score 13, 16 points, fine. I don't care. The Niners' pass defense is their weakness on their defense. And getting after the quarterback isn't phenomenal. They have 15 sacks as a team right now through 6 games. The Vikings have more. The Vikings have 18 total. And this is why I was saying the Niners' defense or their front four is living on a reputation from 2019 to now, and it's not really based on production. Now, hurries are great. Quarterback pressures are great. Those are stats, and the Niners are leading the league or in the top 3 in the league in that. That's great. But let's get the quarterback on the ground. Sacks, strip sacks, fumble recovery. And they almost had one against PJ Walker last week. But horseshoes and hand grenades, right? And that's what a pressure is. Horseshoes and hand grenades. Just because you're getting a pressure doesn't mean that pressure isn't resulting in a completion and a first down or a completion to make it 3rd and 3 instead of 3rd and 10. So these are good stats to have, but closing the deal would be even better. Now let's look at San Francisco's stats coming off the Browns game where offensively, Purdy only threw for 125 yards. They only ran for a little over 100, but still the number 6 offense in the league, 13th passing offense, averaging 223 yards a game. Number 3 running the ball, 148.3, and still number 2 in points scored, averaging 30.7 per game. Overall, the number 3 defense, 10th against the pass, allowing 197.8 yards a game. 6th against the run, averaging 80.2. So that 160 did make a bit of a dent in upping the Niners' average per game, but still well under 100. Number 1 in points allowed, 14.5. And they still have the number 1 turnover differential of +8. So what are the matchups to watch here? The Vikings, again, are not a pushover, guys. Browns were 2-3. I think a lot of us thought that they were a pushover, even though the defense was as good as it was. Figured San Francisco would find a way to win that game, probably by 2 scores. Let's say, 10 to 13 points. Did not happen. Defense got after them, but the Vikings cannot employ the type of defense that the Browns did. They don't have the corners. They have a good D-line, or at least one really good D-lineman in Danielle Hunter. And that's the first matchup to watch. How is Danielle Hunter going to fare against either a hobbled Trent Williams, if he doesn't play, a healthy Jalen Moore as a backup, or if he lines up on the right-hand side against Colton McKivitz? He's their biggest pass rusher, right? I think Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator for the Vikings. I might have gotten that wrong. I apologize. But the D coordinator, if they're going to bring pressure, Purdy's got to be able to pick it apart, right? The ideal situation would be for a team to be able to get pressure on Purdy with 4 or 5 and drop 6 or 7 into coverage. I don't know if the Vikings can do that. Again, the 15th ranked overall defense, 17th against the pass, 18th against the run. I mean, they're just very average. And I think the Niners need to exploit personnel mismatches, assuming everybody's healthy, and we're going to get into that, and schematic mismatches. If you're going to blitz and there's going to be one-on-one on receivers, Purdy's got to recognize that. We're going to get to Purdy in a second. So now let's flip the other side of the ball. The Niners run D against Alexander Mattison and Cam Akers. They need to shut it down, right? They need to shut it down. The Vikings are averaging 75 yards a game. I don't want to see in the first quarter the Vikings already having 30 or 35 yards. Shut it down. Kirk Cousins can beat them, right? Kirk Cousins is a good enough quarterback to beat the Niners defense with Justin Jefferson. They don't have Justin Jefferson. That, the number one wide receiver to me in football, that's a huge loss, right? Huge loss. They can control the other receivers. Starts with stopping the run. Keep the Vikings under 100 yards, close to or under their average. Make them one-dimensional. Give Cousins as many empty yards as you want. And when it gets to points time, keep him out of the end zone, settle for field goals. Biggest threat offensively is going to be tight end TJ Hawkinson. So how is either Fred Warner or maybe even Isaiah Oliver as the big slot corner going to match up against him? Niners play a lot of zone. You're not going to see many instances where Warner or Oliver would be manned up on Hawkinson, but why not? Mix it up. He is offensive threat number one, especially in the passing game. Don't let the offense run through TJ Hawkinson. He is a Pro Bowl talent of a tight end. He's going to have probably a better game this game than George Kittle, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. And I'm not going to say take Hawkinson away, limit him. He's a big play tight end. So whether it's Warner running with him down the seam, whether it's Oliver maybe locking up man-to-man, bracketing him with maybe a linebacker in a corner, he is now your biggest target to take away. And let's see if San Francisco can do it. Cousins, again, averaging 200. It's going to, anything passing starts with Cousins, right? He's the quarterback. He's averaging 280 yards a game, completing 67% of his passes, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but he has been sacked 15 times. That's what, like 2.5 sacks per game. Brock Purdy, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. Statistically, he's the highest rated quarterback. If the Niners had Kirk Cousins, he had a 14 touchdowns, 4 interception clip, completing 67%, everybody would be thrilled to have Kirk Cousins if you're a Niner fan, if Brock Purdy didn't exist. There are probably 20 teams out there, if not slightly more, that would like Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. He is wildly underappreciated because he plays for a team like Minnesota, who even with Justin Jefferson's help as such an all-pro, uber-talented receiver, he plays in a market that no one cares about. Tell me, honestly, if Cousins wasn't the starting quarterback on Dallas, he wouldn't get a lot more notoriety. On San Francisco, on the Jets, on the Giants, on the Chiefs, on the Steelers, on the Browns, on the Packers. He's on Minnesota. It's one of the reasons why he does not get the due that he's deserved. Get to Cousins, get him on the ground, make him uncomfortable. He can be rattled. Throughout the course of Cousins' career, I wouldn't say he is a big game, crucial, big spot type quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. And I'm not going to say he wilts, but he can be rattled. The front 4 or 5 or 6, however many they're going to send, need to get to him. Who's running back number 2? Let's go to San Francisco now. Who's running back number 2? This is not a matchup to watch, but something to watch. Even though Jordan Mason right now, 6 games into the season, is the better running back than Eli Mitchell is probably the number 2 running back because Shanahan has a trust issue as a coach. If he doesn't trust you, regardless of the position, you are not going to get a lot of playing time. That's why McCaffrey is a third of the way into the season and hopefully not, but looks to be being run into the ground by Shanahan and his offensive staff. Jordan Mason fumbled in the preseason at the 1 or 2 yard line, and I think that's still in Kyle Shanahan's head. Eli Mitchell hasn't put the ball on the ground in his entire NFL career, but you don't put the ball on the ground when you're not playing, and he's missed a lot of games in his NFL career. Had a good rookie season, still missed time, missed a lot of time last year, missed some time this year getting hurt in practice with a knee injury and did not look good upon his return last week at Cleveland. It should be Jordan Mason. I said last week, I don't want to say it's a thunder and lightning situation, but if McCaffrey's the lightning, then Mason's the thunder. And part of me wants the Niners to sit McCaffrey because, well, one, I think they can win this game without McCaffrey. Vikings are still a decent team, 2-4, but I think they can win the game without McCaffrey. And I would want, one, get McCaffrey some rest. If even though he has an injury, rib or an oblique, this would be a game where he's not getting 25 touches and hit 25 or more times. I'm cool with that. If this rib oblique injury, again, even though it's an injury, it's not a knee, it's not an ankle, it's not a shoulder. Again, it's an injury, but it's not something that's going to affect his lower body, a hip. That would be a running back dreaded type of injury. And it would give him rest. And I would want to force feed Mitchell, Mason, and to a smaller degree, Ty Davis-Price to see who the hell is Shanahan going to feel comfortable with moving forward. Who is going to be that, as I mentioned last podcast, viable running back 2 that should get 10 carries a game, no matter the game, no matter how close, no matter the situation, to give McCaffrey a breather. Shanahan needs this game against a team they should beat without McCaffrey to understand his offense, what his offense could be and needs to be without McCaffrey, and what his running back rotation could and should be when McCaffrey is healthy. I'm for sitting Christian McCaffrey. I would sit Trent Williams because even though this is a conference game, the Bengals seem to be getting their footing, and that is who the Niners play next week at home in San Francisco before a bye. So if I had to pick one of 2 games to sit Trent Williams, it would be this game. Let him get healthy. If anything, God forbid, happens in the Bengals game that he retweaks the ankle, then he's got the bye week to get healthy. I would sit him. Give Jalen Moore some reps, right? Give him reps at tackle. I would play if he's able to go Debo. And Debo's a dog. Debo's tough. Not that McCaffrey isn't. He certainly isn't. Not that Trent Williams isn't, because he played through that ankle injury. He did not want to put Jalen Moore in that situation against Myles Garrett. Danielle Hunter isn't Myles Garrett, but he's, 80-85% of Myles Garrett. So he'll have his hands, Danielle Hunter will have his hands, Jalen Moore, or whoever's blocking Danielle Hunter, will have his hands full. I would sit Trent Williams if Debo's able to go. You can't, again, have, to me, coming off of this loss, McCaffrey and Debo out as part of your bounce back game to get right offensively. Plus, Debo can help fill some of the McCaffrey role as a running back. And I would worry that if McCaffrey's not 100% and they only have 3 running backs active, because they're not going to activate Ty Davis-Price if McCaffrey is active, and McCaffrey gets dinged up again, and I'm not sure what the re-injury rate is with the oblique or rib, and we don't even know what the injury is because they didn't announce it. But if he gets dinged up again and has to go out, then you're only down to 2 running backs. I'd rather have 3 healthy running backs, bring Price into the mix, Shanahan figure out who the hell you have trust in as running back 2 so they can get more carries throughout the season, and rest McCaffrey. Can the 49er receivers beat man-to-man coverage? They have in the past. Maybe the Browns game is an anomaly, but I said last podcast that the Seahawks can be a team that employs this type of defense. They have 3 good corners. They can get physical. Their D-line can get after the quarterback. I mean, hell, they sacked Daniel Jones 11 times, right, on the Giants, although if the Giants had a better offensive line, maybe they sack him 6 times only, which is still a friggin' lot. So they're going to, and that's a division game that they have to see twice. And the Seahawks are only a game and a half back as it stands, and they have Arizona this week. If the Vikings are going to play man, I want to see Ayuk can beat man. I want to see Kittle beat man more. I want to see Debo. And here's something interesting. Chancey Gardner-Smith, I think he's on, is it the Saints now? Safety. Or the Eagles, wound up calling out Debo Samuel that you're running back, you can't run routes. And then Debo clapped back at him, saying, nobody knows who you are, et cetera, which, more people know who Debo is than Chauncey Gardner. But I think, he has a point. Debo's not a great route runner. He's not a great route runner. I would like or would think that that's something that Shanahan would agree with. Who's the better route runner, Ayuk or Samuel? It's Ayuk. I'm not saying Debo can't run routes, but it's probably something he can clean up and polish. Everybody has something they can work on. And if people are going to bump Debo, play man, I would like to see more separation from certain Niner receivers against man coverage. Ayuk can do it. Kittle, let's see. Juwan Jennings, big receiver, strong, not too fast. Can he separate? Ray McLeod should be able to. He's not out there at receiver a ton. And Ronnie Bell, rookie from Michigan. Let's see if he can separate as well. Not sure how much the Vikings are going to play this. And here's something I would be everyone to keep in mind. I do want them to sit McCaffrey. I think McCaffrey sitting changes the way the Vikings play defense. I think the Vikings would play more aggressively with McCaffrey out than they would with McCaffrey on the field. But then again, that's fine. Coming off the Browns game, let's see what the Niners offense can do. It's a good, obviously, in-game situation of playing without a star player, playing against a team that's being aggressive, even though they don't have the talent the Browns do. Let's all recognize that. We know it. They don't have the talent the Browns do. But if they're going to play the same type of defense, let's see the Niners expose that. Get more confidence offensively from your receivers and Purdy, even though I don't think anyone's lacking confidence, but let's bounce back. Let's bounce back. Kittle needs to bounce back, 1 reception for 1 yard. Shanahan needs to treat Kittle the way that Andy Reid treats Travis Kelce. And it's not a this year thing. The Chiefs are lacking receivers, right? They traded with the Jets to get Mecole Hardman back, but part of the Travis Kelce offensive output phenomenon is twofold. 1, because Reid draws stuff up specifically for him, and 2, the chemistry and comfort level that Pat Mahomes has with him. Now, that's something, hopefully, that continues to grow between Purdy and Kittle, but Shanahan's also got to put Kittle in situations where it's a clean, I don't say clean read for Purdy, but it gets Kittle open, right? He's too good of a player to only have 1 reception for 1 yard, independent of what the Browns are doing to you or any defense is doing to you schematically. So I would love to see this is a game where Kittle, again, especially if a McCaffrey's out or a Debo, that Kittle has, around 5 receptions. All that being said, I think San Francisco gets back to their winning ways. With Justin Jefferson, this is a different game. It's probably a closer game. It's probably a 1-score game. But without him, I think San Francisco wins this game 30-17 to take their record to 6-1 as they head home to take on the Bengals next week before their bye. Don't take the Vikings lightly. It's an away game. Apparently, they're supposed to be, based on ticket sale projections, a large amount of red in the stands. But Kirk Cousins is a very good quarterback. He's not elite. He is a very good quarterback. He just might not have the weapons without a prime Dalvin Cook, without a Justin Jefferson. Still has a Hawkinson, still has some receivers that he can throw to, but just may not have enough to exploit the Niners' defense and to just outscore what the Niners' offense should be able to do to the Vikings defensively. So that concludes the 49ers section of the podcast. Excuse me, stick around. We're going to be talking NBA, James Harden. We're going to be talking comic books, Justice Society of America by Geoff Johns, and making Week 7 NFL picks. Stay right here.
It's plus time.
So James Harden of the Philadelphia 76ers did not show up for Monday's preseason game at the Nets or practice, which was yesterday, Wednesday, and gave no explanation to the team or head coach Nick Nurse. So I think, given his history, I think we can change maybe his nickname from the Beard to the Jerk-Off. If you remember, a couple months ago, Harden picked up his $35.6 million player option because if he didn't, he would not make nearly that much from any other team. but demanded to be traded, and it looks like he wants to go to the LA Clippers. If you remember, James Harden was traded back in 2012 from Oklahoma City, team that drafted him, to Houston. Was there for several years, then forced a trade to the Nets in 2020, where at the beginning of the season, he just showed up like a fat slob, completely out of shape, complaining, he didn't want to be there, got his wish, got traded to the Nets, then forced his way out of Brooklyn when things were going to crap with the whole Kyrie Irving saga, Kevin Durant trying to be the good soldier. Harden's like, no, I want out. And he got traded to the Sixers in 2021. Part of me wants to applaud him because you have, let me take a step back. When it comes to your career, you need to take as much power and ownership of it as possible, right? You shouldn't have to, even though you're a multimillionaire, have to settle for where a team is going to trade you. You should have a say, right? And I'm cool with that, like, once, maybe twice. And we can't compare professional athletes making, $35.6 million a year to what we're making as, being in advertising, teachers, policemen, firemen, nurses, blue collar job. Can't compare it. And we don't have as many employment options, or companies are going to want our services as much as teams that are going to want an all-star caliber player's services. So it is not comparable at all. So I applaud him for, kind of taking the reins. But on the flip side, I can understand organizations that don't want to deal with this. Organizations that think he's a malcontent dick and that he's just in it for himself. And he is. And he goes about things a bit like an asshole. He's 34 now, obviously on the back nine of his career. He's been declining in points per game since 2020, so the past 3 seasons. But he has upped his assists per game average to about 10.5 per game. So he's still a player. So he's still a scorer. He's playing more of the point guard role. He's more of a facilitator. So he's still he's still someone that can give a team 20 points and 10 assists per game. And then whatever you get, rebounds, steals, blocks, whatever, that's just gravy. But he's a player over the course of his career and a diminishing point scorer now where he's an empty points player. He'd be a good player for you in fantasy basketball, and I think my son actually wants to attempt a league this year. I've never done that. So listen, hey, we may pick up Harden, draft Harden, whatever, regardless of where he ends up. But it's empty points. He doesn't, historically throughout his career, he rarely adds anything crucial, anything meaningful, any big moments, shots, or points. He doesn't shy away from them. He just sucks at them. And he wilts in the playoffs. He has a history of not performing well, or even worse than that, in the playoffs. So what team is gonna want that? Or what team, there's going to be a team that's going to want it. And if it's the Clippers, what are they going to wind up giving up? Because remember, they have to get that salary close to 35.6. I don't know if a team would be even open at this point in Harden's career to throwing in a first round draft pick. Maybe you trade 2 players or 3 players salary wise and a second round pick. Something like that. But what do the Clippers think he's worth? How many assets are they willing to give up for a 34-year-old? Again, can average 20 and 10. I'm not going to minimize that, but has a history of being a jerk-off, could turn jerk-off at any moment. But the Clippers might be backed into a corner, right? Like, they're in the West. They don't have a third viable scoring option behind Kawhi and, Paul George, blanking on his name. And those players are going to miss time. And they've dealt with significant injuries. Kawhi is now 2 years removed from an ACL. Paul George has battled injury history. They're not exactly young players. They're early 30s as well. So getting another player, granted on the wrong side of 30, who can help score and maybe help offset the injury games that they're going to miss or the load management games that Kawhi or Paul George are going to miss, and maybe even Harden himself, I think it's something that they need to do. But for Harden, where does he have a better chance making a deep playoff run? And the answer is in the East, because Philly still has a pretty good team, and the only other teams better than them, Milwaukee and Boston. He goes to the Clippers. I don't know where they are, again, because you can't project health, but you just know Kawhi and Paul George are going to miss games. You know it. It's just a matter of, is it 10? Is it 15? Is it 20 or more? But the Nuggets are the champs. You have Phoenix, who now has Kevin Durant, and they've made other acquisitions, Chris Paul. The Grizzlies are a good team. The Sacramento Kings were very surprising last year. The Lakers, we'll see what they have and if Golden State can bounce back. So I'm not saying that the Clippers would be the 7th best team in the West. Maybe they're a 4 through 8 type of team. But that's going to be difficult to get out of the West. Much easier to get out of the East. You got to beat Milwaukee or Boston when it comes playoff time, but I'd much rather face the Hawks, the Knicks, the Heat, even though they went to the finals, than any of the teams that I mentioned in the West. Harden will be on his way out. He lost faith in general manager Daryl Morey, who was his general manager in Houston, who brought him over from Oklahoma City. Apparently that trust is broken, and James Harden wants out. He's going to get traded. And the problem with these, and again, I applaud it, but I also just think they're dicks, is Daryl Morey, who's the GM of the Sixers, he can't trade him anywhere because James Harden can play the fat bastard card and just get out of shape and not show up. And then that team has nothing to show for the assets they gave Philadelphia to get Harden. So he'll wind up going to the Clippers, and there is no detriment or punishment for acting this way, for trying to, get out. The Sixers don't owe him anything. Or maybe Oklahoma City did. Maybe Houston kind of did because he was with them for so long. But the Sixers don't, and the Nets certainly didn't. But too much player empowerment in the NBA. I know NFL players are trying to get that. Hopefully they don't, just because it makes, I don't know. It again, part of me understands it and applauds it, but I think 70% of me is like, or more, is like, come on, man, just don't be a dick. So let's transfer from the NBA to comic books. I mentioned writer Geoff Johns a few times before. One of my favorite comic book writers. He had a very good run on the title Justice Society of America from 2009 to 2010. I just wound up picking up the 4 trade paperbacks that encompassed that run. And the first 3 trade paperbacks are titled Thy Kingdom Come. 18 issues or thereabouts. And what it is actually a sequel to the highly acclaimed 1996 story called Kingdom Come, written by Mark Waid and illustrated by Alex Ross. And it was a series, I forget how many issues, but I have the trade paperback. It explains the story of older superheroes, older Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, sometime in the future where, a situation happens where Lois Lane and Clark are married. Lois Lane winds up getting killed by something that the Joker does at the Daily Planet. And Superman finds him, brings him to justice, but doesn't kill him. That's just something that Superman does, and something obviously that Batman doesn't do either. But there's a superhero called Magog who just walks right up to the Joker that, as he's being apprehended by Superman, and kills him. Just blasts an energy beam through his chest. Joker dies. And when the public was cool with that because they figured, hey, how many times has Batman captured the Joker? He just gets out, kills more people. Gets captured, gets out, kills more people. And even though this Joker was, I think, like 70 plus years old, Magog and the public And some superheroes agreed with it. They're like, enough's enough. We have to clean this stuff up. And what that wound up doing was fracturing the superhero community. So you had superheroes that thought, okay, it's okay. Let's just beat the hell out of or kill supervillains, because why are we just going to lock them up if we're going to just keep going through this? And then good superheroes that don't believe in, taking the law or the death penalty into their own hands, fighting not only the bad guys, but good guys who want to kill bad guys, if you guys can follow that. Humans get involved, the U.S. government, they don't know how to control this, and they wind up dropping, an A-bomb on the superheroes where they're all fighting outside of this big, supervillain prison, and winds up killing a whole lot of superheroes. This story takes place right after that happens, and the older Superman from the Kingdom Come story that I just described, which basically takes place on a different Earth, is transported to the Earth where the Justice Society of America resides. And people aren't sure, is he the real Superman? That Earth wasn't supposed to, there aren't supposed to be other Earths. Is it an imposter, a villain, etc.? So there's a lot of sorting out that has to happen. And as they're doing that, a very, very large being by the name of Gog, G-O-G, is unearthed in Africa. And he winds up being a god, G-O-D, who starts walking the continent and saving people, healing people, purifying rivers, killing, people that are going to war, that are subjugating, folks in this continent or certain areas. The Justice Society hears of this. They go to investigate, and they wind up talking to this god called Gog. And, some of them believe that he's, here to do good. Some of them are very leery about it. And while they're seeing him perform these miracles or helping people, just helping people, he winds up helping or fixing some of the Justice Society of America members. One of the characters is blind, gives him his sight back. One of the characters is insane, gives him his sanity. One of the characters, Power Girl, is from another Earth and she wants to go back there, but she believes her Earth doesn't exist. This deity can feel her pain and her sorrow for missing her world, sends her back there. When that happens, the Justice Society is very leery of, like, where did you send her? And Gog says she wanted to go home. I sent her home. So in his mind, he just keeps doing good things. The turning point is when a human member winds up joining the Justice Society. He kind of has a power inside him and has like some sort of a lance or something on his hand where he can shoot energy beams out of it. And in this story, his great-grandfather was a president of the United States, I think Roosevelt, who in this world founded the Justice Society of America. So as his great-grandson, he wants to be part of it, and he gets to become part of the team, goes to Africa, is also following this deity, seeing all the good deeds he's doing, but he winds up getting killed in like crossfire with some of these insurgent groups that are causing harm to a lot of the people. And the deity Gog raises him from the dead, resurrects him, and calls him Magog, which is the same name from old Superman's world, from the Kingdom Come story, who wind up killing the Joker. So now Superman thinks, crap, the same sort of stuff is going to happen on this planet that happened on my planet. Superheroes are going to splinter. We're going to fight. There's just going to be bad stuff is going to happen. And it starts because some Justice Society of America members start following this deity and believe in him, and some don't. And then people start following him, believing him, and some don't. Ultimately, this deity, Gog, wants everyone to kneel to him and to worship him. And then once the Justice Society hear this, they're like, that's not going to happen. People are kind of okay with it, or at least the people in Africa, but Justice Society isn't. And they wind up finding out that as he keeps literally walking the earth, he's infecting the earth. And maybe this deity doesn't realize it. They never clarify it, but he's infecting the earth. And just like in, Catholic religions and maybe, Judaic, Jewish religions as well, the whole God created the earth in 7 days. Here it's Gog was going to cleanse the earth in 7 days or fix the earth in 7 days. And he's fixing the people and cleansing some stuff, but he's also destroying the actual structural foundation of the earth. And he may leave after day 7, and then the earth is just shot to shit. So the superheroes realize this. They wind up defeating him. And at the end, the old Superman from another world, for the other Kingdom Come world, is actually sent back to his home world. And they do this in a really interesting way. They send him back right at the time point of things happening in the 1996 Kingdom Come story. And the story for him plays out the exact same way in this Justice Society of America comic as it did in Kingdom Come, which was, I just thought, really smartly done and well done. And for those that haven't read, I think this Justice Society of America run, I think was really well done. If you want to go small bites first, I think Kingdom Come is highly recommended. Mark Waid is a fantastic writer. Alex Ross, even though I mentioned he's an illustrator, he's a painter. Every frame of that comic book is painted, and it's beautiful. He is the preeminent comic book painter of this generation and possibly all time right now. And in the Justice Society of America books, whenever they flash back to Superman, the older Superman talking about something that happened on his world, or when they send him back to this world and you see things play out, Alex Ross is the one that paints those frames, those panels, those scenes. So it's 13, 14 years later, and he's back in that world of Kingdom Come somewhat. Really well done. The 4th trade paperback in this Geoff Johns series is called Black Adam and Isis. Black Adam, the same character from the movie last year that The Rock played, and Isis is his love. And basically, Black Adam, finds an amulet to bring Isis back, and Isis was supposed to be a benevolent woman or goddess, and she winds up turning evil and wanting to kill people and cleanse the whole land, and he has to work against her. And the Justice Society was an okay, whatever it was, 4 or 5 comic book run, but I think the main thrust of Geoff Johns' run on Justice Society of America was the Thy Kingdom Come, the first 3 trade paperbacks. Worth reading. I would start with Kingdom Come. It is considered a classic among comic book and graphic novel trade paperbacks, again, by Mark Waid and Alex Ross. So let's conclude with NFL Week 7 picks. A lot of teams on bye this week. The Bengals, the Cowboys, the Titans, Jets, Panthers, and Texans. So that starts out with the Thursday night game. I'm recording this on a Thursday. Tonight, the Jaguars at the Saints. Trevor Lawrence is banged up. His knee looks like he may play, could be limited. I haven't read anything about an official announcement. Derek Carr had a big game for the Saints last week. The Jaguars, while the more explosive team, I think this is a game just given Lawrence's not being 100% and the weapons that the Saints have. Another week of Alvin Kamara getting back into the Saints offense and the defense that the Saints employ. I will take New Orleans on Thursday night prime video. Starting off our Sunday games, 1 o'clock, the Raiders at the Bears. So Justin Fields is hurt. They are going with a rookie quarterback. Other than Justin Fields running, this will be a downgrade. We'll see how much. The Bears right now have the first 2 picks in the NFL draft. So all things being equal, I think this is Justin Fields' last season in Chicago. I do not anticipate him being traded before the trade deadline in about a week and a half. Plus, he has a thumb injury, and I don't think anyone's going to trade for damaged goods. Jimmy Garoppolo left last week's game against the Patriots with a back injury, went to the hospital, questionable to play. Whether it's Garoppolo, whether it's Brian Hoyer, or even Aiden O'Connell, I think the Raiders will get the win. Cleveland at Indianapolis. So for the Colts, rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson is done for the year, has to have surgery on his shoulder, so it'll be Gardner Minshew the rest of the way. For the Browns, not sure if it's going to be PJ Walker again or Deshaun Watson, but I will take Cleveland. Buffalo at New England. So the Patriots showed some life, scoring, I think it was 17 points at the Raiders in their loss last week after just scoring 3 points combined in the previous 2 weeks. The Bills, after a lackluster showing against the Giants, I still think get the win in New England. Washington at the Giants. Daniel Jones still to be determined if he's going to play. They're being a bit coy about the neck injury. Remember, it was a neck injury that made him lose several games, maybe half the season 2 years ago. Tyrod Taylor played really well in his absence. Saquon Barkley back. I do think Washington behind Sam Howell and that defense and that front four. Again, the Giants have 6 touchdowns in 5 games. They probably will score one against the Redskins. I think the Redskins are a bit more explosive offensively than the Giants and have the better defense right now than the Giants. Give me, not the Redskins, I'm sorry, give me the Commanders. Atlanta at Tampa Bay. So Tampa Bay lost to at home against the Lions. Atlanta lost at home against the Commanders. Assuming there's no tie, someone should win here in a bounce-back game. Desmond Ridder threw a couple head-scratching interceptions last week, and head coach Arthur Smith was caught on the sideline. Not too happy about that. Baker Mayfield, the better quarterback of the two. I think the Buccaneers get the win. Detroit at Baltimore. Lions 5-1. Gonna win their division. A legit playoff team and a legit Super Bowl threat in the NFC. Baltimore won in London against Tennessee. I think this is kind of a home field type of thing pick for me because it's been proven Jared Goff so much better at home than on the road. I think Baltimore will do enough to get the win. Pittsburgh at the Rams. Rams bounced back after losing to the Eagles 2 weeks ago to get a nice win last week. Steelers are coming off the bye. Rams now with Cooper Kupp to pair with Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell. Steelers are offensively challenged. The Rams are not a great defense beyond Aaron Donald, but they're playing okay as a team, and I think they will do enough to beat the Steelers. Arizona at Seattle. Josh Dobbs kind of came back down to earth after that Cowboys win in the past couple games. Seattle, tough loss at Cincinnati, but I did love to see it. Seahawks being at home, even I think if they were at Arizona, I would take them. Give me Seattle. Green Bay at Denver. What an unappealing game this is. This would be sexy if it was like 10 or 15 years ago. Not really so much now. Aaron Jones, running back for the Packers, should be able to play. Jordan Love, again, very uninspired, low completion percentage. Russell Wilson, not much better. Broncos defense, not great. This could be a high-scoring game because both defenses aren't great, or it could just be an ugly game because both teams in general aren't great. Don't feel great about this pick, but give me Denver. The Chargers at the Chiefs. The Chargers are a team that wind up playing the Chiefs really well and tough for like the past 3 years, but with the Chargers missing Mike Williams, lost to the Cowboys on Monday night this past week. I think the Chargers are better on paper than they are against teams they play. I wouldn't be shocked if they beat the Chiefs for whatever reason. They play them well. But the Chiefs getting Mecole Hardman back, if he is even going to play, I would imagine him being active. He's very familiar with the offense. Another receiving option and one that Patrick Mahomes probably has some trust in. Give me the Chiefs. Sunday night, Miami at Philadelphia should be a really good battle of 5-1 teams. Eagles do not look close to the team they were last year. Losing both offensive and defensive coordinators have an impact on this team. Miami, super explosive. Could they lay somewhat of an egg like they did when they went to Buffalo a few weeks ago? Sure. I think this is going to be a fun game. Miami right now is the better offense. I think both defenses are comparable, but I think the Dolphins will get the win. And in the Monday night game, I picked San Francisco over the Vikings. So that concludes the 49ers Plus podcast for this week. Like always, I want to thank you for listening, for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your podcast or YouTube listening routine. Actually want to shout out to the Las Vegas Aces winning back-to-back WNBA championships last night, beating the New York Liberty. So congrats to them. We'll have college football on tonight and this weekend. Pro football kicks off tonight. Jacksonville at New Orleans. Hockey is underway. Preseason Basketball's underway and postseason baseball. Amazing how I mentioned postseason baseball last, and it's the actual postseason. We're in the ALCS and NLCS. It just goes to show how much I don't watch or care about baseball. But lots of sports between now and then, lots of TV between now and then. Today, episode 3 of Loki drops. I will be talking about that on Monday. But as always, between now and then, have a great weekend. Stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe. And we will talk soon. Take care.